I'm your host, JayzTwoCents. We've got a lot of stuff to cover today. Robots that can chase you down and kill you, Nissan's brand new steering-by-wire system, and the 2012 list of most unsecure passwords ever. So normally I have all kinds of things to talk about when it comes to Toyota, but this week we're changing it up and bringing in some Nissan. This is kind of cool because I'm a fan of Nissan, I own a Nissan, and Nissan is saying starting with their Infinity series in 2013, they're going to get rid of the mechanical steering system in their cars. They didn't say which model yet, but they're going to debut with at least one model, and they're going to go with a steering-by-wire system. What that means is they're going to use electronic servos and sensors in the steering column rather than have a mechanical connection. It's going to use actuators and electric motors. A lot of people were worried when they made this announcement that what if the car loses power? Well, it turns out that there's a clutch attached to the steering wheel that's still mechanically attached to the wheels that will give you enough steering to get out of a sticky situation should you happen to lose power. It's kind of like the new electronic throttle systems, only it's going to work with the steering. I think it's kind of cool. It's supposed to alleviate a lot of the small input that a driver has to put into their car. That way, when you're driving straight down the road, you can just hold the wheel and the car will go straight. It has cameras that will read the lines in the road and it will stay straight. All you have to do is give it big inputs to tell it when to turn. I don't know how it's going to feel. I'll probably go test drive one when something like that comes out. I think it's really cool, but it's definitely a step towards cars in the future that can drive themselves. So on October 24th, this robotics company put up this video demonstrating this new robot that they've designed that can look at an atmosphere and an environment. It can analyze obstacles and it can maneuver over those obstacles, including jumping, it can climb, it can use its arms to stabilize itself, it can go up and down stairs, and this thing can even run. This is kind of reminding me of the movie I, Robot, and it makes me wonder whether or not we're getting a few steps closer towards that whole Skynet thing where we're going to have robots taking over the world, or the Matrix. You know, that stuff is all science fiction, but there's a hint of truth to all of it. But when it comes to artificial intelligence, when it starts learning on its own and learning how to take over its masters, that's when we have to worry. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not afraid of robots, but probably not going to get one of these things. The only thing I'm really asking myself is how far can technology take this artificial intelligence? I mean, already this is incredible. I mean, there was the Osmo robot that came out about 10 years ago from Honda. That's what it was, Honda. And they have it on display over at Disneyland, and it was kind of amazing that that thing could walk upstairs, but I'd say we've come a long way in the last 10 years when it comes to this particular robot. I think it's pretty cool. So CNET has just put out the 2012 top 20 worst passwords of the year. And the top 3 are no different than they were in 2011. That's 12345, 123456, and password. Shit, I gotta go change my password. Other honorable mentions were I love you, Jesus, let me in. I'm embarrassed to say I've actually used that one before. Password 1, password 2, trust no one. That's actually kind of clever. Monkey, football. I mean, the only thing worse is using your own name. So a group of scientists over at Flinders University did a sleep study in regards to gaming before bedtime. And they wanted to see if there's a correlation between the amount of games and the type of games you play before bed and whether or not it affects the amount and quality of sleep that you get. I don't know about you guys, but I live a pretty hectic life. I'm a full-time dad, husband, I've got a full-time career, and I barely have enough time to do the YouTube thing as it is. So when I play games, it's typically late at night and before bed. And sometimes I can get in a couple of hours. But they say that if you spend 150 minutes or more playing games before bed, you're going to get 30 minutes less of REM. And REM, if you're not aware, is the rapid eye movement. They found that those that spent 50 minutes or less typically were not affected at all in their sleep pattern by the games that they played or the type of games that they played. But they did find that violent or war and shoot 'em up, first-person shooter type games certainly had more of an effect on them than MMOs or other slow, progressive game style. I'll be honest with you, my wife has told me many times in the morning that I've gone to bed and in the middle of the night have woken up screaming, throwing grenades, diving for cover, shooting people, and I never remember any of it. But I'm going to call shenanigans on that, because unless she records it and shows me playing Battlefield 3 in bed, no sexual pun intended there. That could be kind of fun though. I'm going to call shenanigans. I want to see it. And if she actually records that, hell, I'll put it up on Tech Addiction, why not? So with all of the stuff going on in the news regarding Apple and the lawsuits with Motorola and Samsung and a few other people in there, the US Patent and Trademark Office has decided to go ahead and review some of these patents that Apple's using to flex that patent muscle, especially when they're going after Samsung. And the Trademark Office has determined that there are 20 patents that should not belong to Apple, basically in the regards of it stops the advancement of technology. See, if you're not aware, you can file a patent on anything, but you can't file a patent on something that stalls the progression of technology. So they've determined that 20 patents that belong to Apple have been invalidated. And that's great news for Samsung, because number 19 on that list of 20 is the rubber banding effect, where you scroll up and you hit the end of a page and it kind of bounces and comes back. That's called rubber banding. And Apple claims that they own the patent on that, which they do, and now they don't. So Samsung has already written a letter to the appeals court and the judge that's presiding over the case, their $1 billion case, to determine whether or not they can just get the whole thing thrown out. I don't know what the legality is going to be there since it was invalidated after they lost the lawsuit, but now that it's no longer a valid point, who knows? This may be the best news and the best Christmas that Samsung has ever had. Speaking of Apple and lawsuits, they're getting sued again. See, last week I brought to you the report that said that the photographer who did the eyeball that they used in their Retina display ad never gave Apple permission to use that. Well, now a mother, a father, and a doctor, a pediatrician, is now suing Apple over this. And what their claim is that when kids use an iPad, they typically put it on the floor and then they hover over it and use it like that. So they're looking down all the time. So the claim is that this child has apparently developed a deformity in their neck because of the constant hunching position of playing with the iPad on the floor. So never mind the fact that the parents are using the iPad more than likely as a 2012 babysitter, where back in my day it was the Nintendo. Now it's the iPad. Here, go away, play with your iPad. I'll admit I'm guilty of giving my kid the iPad when I want her to just please be quiet. But really, you're gonna claim the iPad now is deforming your children? For the love of God, just think of the children. This is ridiculous. My iPad has never given me any sort of a deformity. I don't know where they get that from. I'm starting to think a lot of the technology heavyweights in this country are actually watching Tech Addiction. First, a few weeks back, I reported that Verizon hadn't taken my money and they hadn't shipped my iPhone 5 and it had been 2 weeks. And the very next day, they took my money and had a tracking number in my inbox. So I got my phone after that Tech Edition. Then last week, I reported on Google as being one of the top paid software development companies in the Silicon Valley, and that Zynga was number 4. And Zynga makes Draw Something. I believe they bought Farmville. They've stolen a few other things from the internet, but they make Facebook games, iPad, iPod, iPhone apps. Well, they were number 4 highest paid in the Silicon Valley. Well, on Tuesday, when the iPad mini was being announced, they quickly laid off 100 people. So what better way to avoid the publicity of laying off 100 people? Do it during an iPad or an Apple event. But anyway, this came out of nowhere. Some of the people interviewed who were laid off said they had no indication that the company was in any sort of trouble. They had no idea that they were going to be laid off. They simply came into work one day and that was it. Little meeting, you're gone. So if you've watched last week's Tech Addiction, just ignore the fact that I said that Zynga is a good company to work for and they make good money. When comparing it to the Google charts, I wouldn't take that bet anymore. So speaking of companies that are sinking, AMD is expected to hold a press release on October 29th at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. And as I mentioned last week, again, I swear to God, all the big people are watching Tech Addiction because AMD says, oh shit, JayzTwoCents outed us. Now we have to hold a press conference. The cat's out of the bag. But it's anticipated that AMD is going to be announcing that they're going to be laying off 15% of their staff. So 15% of their 11,400 employees, you're going to be looking at almost 2,000 people laid off. That's a lot of people. And then it's anticipated from an inside source who wasn't named in the article that the layoffs will be complete by the end of Q4 this year. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year for anyone who works at AMD. You're fired. So right on the heels of AMD laying off 15% of its staff coming up the end of this year, so AMD has been awarded an award from the Dow Jones Sustainability Index as one of the most corporate responsible companies in the nation. So let me get this straight. You can't keep up with Intel, who by the way also got the same award. You put out processors over the last couple of years that nobody cares about and is 3 years behind Intel. You lay off 15% of your staff and you get an award. That sounds about right. So one of the things that this award is about ethics and the way they conduct business and the impact on the environment and the quality of the employer they are to their employees. I think there's 15% of their employees who would probably disagree with this award, but it's just completely ironic to me that they are laying off 15% of their staff, but they're getting an award over here for being a great company corporate-wise. It's official. Nothing makes sense in this world anymore to JayzTwoCents. So how can you talk about AMD without the Piledriver release the other day? And I can't give you any first-hand experience on it. All I can tell you is that there's been about 30 benchmarks on it when it comes to some very reputable reviewers like Guru 3D, Engadget. All of those people have done reviews on it, Linus Tech Tips, and they all say basically the same thing. It is an improvement over Bulldozer, but we're only talking 10 to 15% based on the application environment that you put it in, games and such. It's still not core for core hanging with Intel. So and considering that they've already said that they're not planning on putting out any high-end desktop processors beyond Piledriver, Steamroller's a maybe. I just don't think I'm gonna pop $200 into this computer to go to Piledriver. If anything, I'll just save my money and a little bit later go to Intel, because I know that Intel is gonna have an upgrade path for me. But when it comes to Piledriver, I wouldn't say it's a flop, but I also wouldn't say it's the improvement people were hoping for, and it's definitely not gonna float that ship again, because that ship is still sinking. It is going down. Alright guys, it's time for your favorite part of the show, and mine too. It's technology's Dumbass of the Week. This week's Dumbass of the Week is Aaron D. Templeton. You see, Aaron had this bright idea. He found a meth dealer who was willing to make him a deal. Buy in bulk, I'll give you more. It's kind of like the Costco of drugs. So he says, oh man, I don't have that much money, but I'll get together all my friends and we'll all pitch in, buy as much meth as we can, and we'll split it, and we'll all get more meth for our money. It's freaking genius. Oh my God, I should be in politics. So what's he do? He gets on his iPhone and he starts to text all of his friends, and he ends up sending a text to a narcotics detective in his own police department. Hey bro, you wanna help me buy some methamphetamines? Gonna get a real good discount. Wait, was Bobby's number end with a 49 or a 42? I ain't that big of a deal. So the detective thinks that his colleagues might be playing a trick on him. So after verifying that the number didn't belong to any of his colleagues and they weren't playing a trick on him, he says, sure, I'll come meet with you. I got $150, bro. So Aaron thinks, yeah, jackpot, alright. Goes and meets up with the guy. Second he gets out of his car, handcuffs him, puts him in the back. Detective takes his phone, he now has the information for the dealer, and all the other people in his phone book who he was trying to make this deal with to go and buy more methamphetamine. So Aaron D. Templeton, as cool as I think your name sounds, for texting a narcotics officer an offer to buy drugs, you're a dumbass. Okay guys, that's all I got for this week. Do me a favor, if you've got any questions that you'd like to see answered, put them down in the comments below. I want to start a new Q&A series where I answer all of your computer and technology questions. So put a comment down below with your question, and if I like it, I'll answer it, and I'll do a video in a Q&A series where I feature you. Check out this week's cool video of the day, and check out my Tech Addiction series here. And as always, follow me on Twitter, subscribe, like, favorite, share it with your grandma, your mom, your girlfriend, your dog, your boss, your neighbor,